men are struggling, it seems.
Yes.
I think, the more and more I talk on this show about dating apps and what it's like to be a man in this dating climate, especially one that's become more digitalized than ever before, the conversation always emerges in the sort of like the comment sections and stuff about men's struggles here.
Mm-hmm.
Because, these dating apps, they seem to be not well designed for the like bottom 50% of men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm with you. What I like about the conversation today is we're finally acknowledging it's okay to acknowledge that, men are getting crapped on. I feel like just a year ago, if you said that, oh no, what are you talking about? We're still in the patriarchy. You can't. No, men are struggling. High suicide rates, highest levels of loneliness, highest issues around mental health. Men are struggling. And the fact that we can just talk about that and all acknowledge, okay, let's figure out how to deal with this is a good place to begin, right? But now we have to begin. It begins with the awareness and talking about it. It extends into creating safe spaces for men to be able to talk. I love that. What you see now is you see these podcast communities creating these spaces where men feel like they can be acknowledged and seen. And that allows for there to be connection with other men going through those same challenges, which creates camaraderie and helps you to break out of that loneliness. So we're on the path, but we have to acknowledge some of those larger trends that we see. I know Richard Reeves talks about this quite a bit. Phenomenal book of Boys and Men, where you can see just the levels of unemployment, the lower levels of educational attainment for men, the high levels of drug usage, the high levels of what Richard Reeves calls sedation, essentially, is drug usage, pornography watching, where you have a large number of men just sedating themselves out of pain, right, out of loneliness. And so I think we're in a great place to begin working on the problem, but it's a hell of a problem.
In your book on page 72, it says that in the Tinder research, you found that one of the main reasons men aren't in relationships is because of rejection.
Yes.
Fear of rejection.
Yes. Number one. And many people would laugh at that. They would laugh at that stat. What? Men walk up to me all the time. So how is it that men are fearful of rejection? But the fact of the matter is that the majority of men report the number one reason why they believe they can't find a significant other is the fear of being rejected. Think about that. And that's not just in person. That's online, feeling as if you are going to deny me, you're going to reject me. And to me, that speaks to self-esteem. To me, that speaks to self-love. To me, that speaks to self-worth. And so therefore, we have to really evaluate the why. The why is that? But I think this is such an important point, and this is why we have to look back. Let's look at history. Why is it the case that the Calvin Klein model, or why is it the case that the higher status person gets more interaction? If you think back to pragmatic, right? If you were a woman, what did you need to survive?
I needed a mate that would protect me.
Exactly. Now, the protection would come in one of two things.
And I say that because at some point I'm going to be 8.5 months pregnant, and I ain't going to be able to hunt or forage, or I don't know.
Exactly. And so you need to have the protection. And the protection came in one of two ways. One, physicality, right? Someone's just strong and could fight. But the other was high social status.
Resources, which would bring resources.
Which would bring resources. And therefore, you'd have the protection because of that. So how long did that continue?
Yeah, most of human history.
Most of human history. So we have, through evolution, this has been indoctrinated into our system. And what is rarely talked about is, there were millions of men throughout history who were not the Calvin Klein, not the biggest, didn't have the social status. So what happened to them in history? Do you know what happened to them? Most of them? They were the ones sent to war. These were the men fighting for whatever country. These were the men. When you watch Napoleon and you see, oh my God, the Battle of Waterloo, you had tens of thousands of people. Who's dying? It's those men. It's not the high status men. It's not the Calvin Klein looking, right? It's those men were dying. And we've reached a point in society where we're no longer fighting wars like that. We're fighting with drones and missiles. You have millions upon millions upon millions of men sitting there saying, okay, now what about me? What about me? And this is the problem. This is where we are.
What about men? What were they selecting for?
They were selecting for youth.
Fertility.
Yeah. They wanted youth, which spoke to fertility. And that ran through time. And that's the reason why you see a woman who, I talk about this in the book, there's this golden mean.
Golden mean. I read this and it was the first time I'd ever heard of this idea of the golden mean, but it was super interesting.
The golden mean.
It explained why my girlfriend seems to like my shoulders. She doesn't care if I get fat. I swear to you, I asked her one day, I was like, what do you prefer? Because she asked me, she said, what features do you prefer on me? And obviously I knew that was a trap. So I said everything. I'm not stupid. But then when she asked the question, I asked her the question back. I was like, what features do you prefer on me? She was like, your shoulders.
Yeah.
And I was like, really? I was like, I thought they said you wanted, like, I thought women wanted a six pack. She was like, she was holding my shoulders. She was like, your shoulders.
Yes.
And then I read this golden mean thing in your book and I was like, ah.
Yeah. That's how I could, it's interesting. I spot everyone and I almost am calculating golden mean because I'm always thinking as a matchmaker, like I can match that. So the golden mean has stood throughout history. And there's a different calculation for men and women. For women, the calculation is the difference between waist and hips, right? So it's the percentage of your waist to your hips. So if on average, your waist is 70% of what your hips are, that is considered to be fertile, right? You're considered to be at optimal, you're optimal for fertilization in essence. And you could see that ratio tested throughout time, and you could see that ratio tested throughout culture, which is rare to go to an Eastern collectivist society and see something similar to what's happening in a Western individualistic society. And so the golden mean stands through time. And the reason why it's so interesting is because you look at like Twiggy in the 1970s, I think, in the UK, and you say, gosh, Twiggy was so thin, but she still had a 70% golden mean. You look at people talk about the Kim Kardashians of the world. She has less than 70%. She's probably like 50%, right? Golden mean. And so the golden mean is the optimal measure of what we just consider to be fertile, therefore sexy on average.
And so that hasn't been influenced by, magazines and media and stuff like that. That's just, scientists think that's innate.
Yes, they think that that's innate, but it is impacted by culture. So you go into different subcultures, and there might be more of an exaggeration of the golden mean, right? So